carbon.
I want to give you guys a little bit of a hammer. Now, one of the things that I'm going to do, part of your emissions final is going to be, I'm going to call you in there and it's going to be like me and you, and I'm going to ask you about each emission system. What is this? How does it work? Why do we need it? Okay? You can do this when you get through with all I'm telling you here. This is something you need to know. Usually, when I did this, I would draw it on the board and all. You know, sometimes if I'm in a hurry, my drawing's not that great. I'm going to talk to you about it. We'll start out with positive crankcase ventilation. Since 1961, we've had positive crankcase ventilation. Now, back in the day, they had a draft tube, and what they would do is they would come out of the engine block, and they'd go in with this little pipe that was kind of big, and it would come out, and they would cut it at an angle so that when you were going down the road, it would create low pressure, and it would pull the crankcase vapors out of the crankcase. Where do the crankcase vapors come from? What's the source of your crankcase pressure? Yeah, blow by. You remember the blow by? You've heard blow by. I don't know why you didn't say blow by, but that's what it is. It goes past the rings. You got some stuff going past the rings. It goes in there. You got water. You're making water while you're burning the gas. All that stuff's going past there. And that's why if you don't get the engine warm enough, a lot of that water that goes past the rings and it gets into the crankcase, you know, sledges up to the oil and makes a mess and all that. The PCV system on a modern vehicle will take care of that if it has a chance to warm up where it can steam all that water out of there. But the point is, the PCV valve, and this is the standard old PCV valve, been around a long time. Jeep Cherokees just had a little orifice back in the back of the valve cover. It didn't really have a valve, it just had a little hole. A lot of your foreign vehicles, they got just a little port, you know. But some of the foreign vehicles, like that Camry engine out there, it's got a PCV valve with a spring in it and that plunger. See, that's tapered plunger, got that spring. When you're at idle speed, you got high manifold vacuum and low flow. See, it pulls that spring over here and that taper stops that up, so you don't get a lot of flow. The more speed you got and the more acceleration you got, the lower your engine vacuum is, and that's going to let the spring push it back and you get more flow that way. If it backfires, if the backfires through the intake, it pushes it back and it stops the, you know, stop the backfire from actually going back the other way. So you got manifold vacuum here and you got your crankcase there. You got it? When the PCV system doesn't work, you get moisture. How many of you guys ever took an oil filter cap off and it looked like that? You ever take an oil filter cap off and it looks like that? I have had people that thought they had a blown head gasket or something. But when you take the oil filter cap off and it looks like that, it basically means that you've got not a PCV system that's not working right. And so if you take this closure hose off, and on these engines right here, see this little hose right here on this motor? The PCV valve is on this valve cover right here. And on the other side of this motor, on the opposite corner, right there by the oil filter cap, is the PCV closer tube. Now with the engine idling, you ought to be able to take this tube right here and put your thumb over, you ought to feel some vacuum there. If that PCV system's working right. These PCV valves like to get clogged up with sludge, and if it gets clogged up, and this gets clogged up, it starts to build pressure in a crankcase that blows all the seals. If it blows, and I saw a guy one time in a dealership, he had a little a Chevy van that come in there. I was at a Ford dealership, but we were doing some work for Coca-Cola bottling company on their vehicles. And he had this little Astro van in there that had oil leaks coming from everywhere. And he resealed it. He pulled a transmission, put a rear main in it, put a pan gasket in it, put valve cover gaskets, put all these gaskets on everything. And then they gave it to me for sewing it up, all the little tune-up stuff and all that. And because I was doing the drivability and all, but the PCV system was so clogged up that it wasn't working either way. I mean, it was clogged up on one side and the other, and that's what blew all the seals. So what would have happened if we just put it out there without fixing the PCV system? We'd have blown the seals again, and he'd been back for more work. Now who's going to have to fix that? The guy that didn't check the PCV system, right? And this business about, hey, I wasn't told to check the PCV system. You're a mechanic. You better know what to do. See what I'm saying? This business about pleading ignorance. Well, anyway, there's your PCV. So you got a vacuum right there. Pull in crankcase. See how it's pulling it out? There's the vapors in there, and it's letting the air come in this way. See? That's moisture extracted from the oil. That's pressure that can be able to, and it's cycling the pressure through the, basically pulling it through the intake and then processing it and all that. Anyway, always remember that. When you see that right there, you best be checking the PCV system, see if something's clogged up. And you need to understand how the PCV system works too. Sequence of event, engine starts, engine vacuum is created. The engine vacuum is created because the throttle plate's closed and the pistons are creating low pressure. The PCV valve regulates flow through the crankcase and filtered air enters the engine and carries blow-by gases. You might notice this right here goes to the zip tube that's between the mass airflow sensor and the engine because they want this air to be metered through the mass airflow sensor. Back in the day, they used to have, how many of you guys work on a car that's got a carburetor on a round breather? You know what I'm talking about? And it's got one on the other side, on the side of the valve cover, it's got a thing coming up, it snaps onto a little filter that's in the side of the breather. Have you ever seen that? Mm-hmm. And that is the filter for the PCV system. And so as the PCV system is pulling air through there, and let's say somebody leaves, how many times have you seen that little fiber filter left out of there? And it's just got oil puddled up in there or something, or have oil in the breather. It actually will suck dirt in there. You want it dirt suck through your motor? I don't think so. All right, now EGR since 1972 on gas engines. EGR systems differ in design and feedback, but they do the same job. Exhaust gas is recirculated to prevent NOx formation. So when I ask you what is the EGR valve, what's that for? What's the EGR system? You say it recirculates exhaust gas to prevent the formation of oxides of nitrogen. And it only works when you're cruising, when you're off idle, when you're not at wide open throttle. At wide open throttle and when you're idling, EGR goes dark. But when you're driving down the road, EGR is working. All right, so what your EGR is doing, you might notice, this is the exhaust coming out, and about 5% of the exhaust gas is pulled out of this stream and routed back in here. That gas is inert, and what that means is inert gas won't burn, right? Even if you got some exhaust gas and lit it with your lighter, it wouldn't burn, right? So you're going to run that in there and displace some of the oxygen, and it's going to naturally make the combustion chamber run cooler if it doesn't run cooler. What's the magical Fahrenheit temperature we don't want to see? If we don't want oxides of nitrogen, we don't want it to go above what? Now you know why we're doing a refresher, right? 2,500 degrees. When it's burning in here, it'll go above 2,500 degrees if it's got unfettered, combustion. You put a little inert gas in there, it burns and you still get the power, but it doesn't quite burn as hot. And so the long and short of it is, you can take your EGR, if you open the EGR while the engine's idling, you remember how I showed you that? It generally idles like crap. And if you got one that you've just cranked up, it's been sitting a long time, like all overnight or whatever, you crank it up and it's idling bad, and you work on it for that. If that EGR tube is getting hot and it's sitting there idling, and the engine intake manifold's starting to get hot, you say, this thing's got EGR flowing when it's not supposed to have. Sometimes stuff will get trapped under that EGR panel when that EGR panel opens. Now this is an old GM one that had 3 little solenoids in there, and different things. They like to clog up with stuff too. If the EGR is not flowing, like to make it simple, this right here loves to clog up. And when this clogs up, you'll get a P0401 code because it's expecting to see EGR flow, however it measures it. All right. Here's another one over here. These Fords, you got a little orifice right here, and that's this tube right here on the side of this engine right here. See that little orifice? All right, when you got exhaust gas flowing through here, through that orifice, it's going to raise the pressure in this pipe, and it's going to lower the pressure in that pipe. Because that's what happens when you put an orifice in there. Whatever goes past here does that. You remember how I told you could take a piece of hose and stick it in a bucket of water on one end and hold it up in the air like this and take air and blow it, and it would pull water out of there and make a mist. I mean, it creates low pressure. That's how the carburetors work too. Anyway, whenever that pressure, it gets low here and high here, this measures that. And I was talking about it yesterday. You got these 3 wires coming through there. EGR vacuum regulator is what the engine controller uses to operate the EGR valve. And naturally, so you're pulling exhaust and you're running it through the intake. And if it's clogged up right here, once again, you're going to have issues. Now the early GM systems watch the O2 sensor voltage, which drifts a little bit higher when EGR is flowing because you're displacing oxygen. Okay? Newer GM systems measure manifold vacuum at EGR pintle position. Some EGR systems use sensors to measure flow like the one on the left, and it's a closed loop system. A closed loop system means the PCM opens the EGR and it looks at this and see how much is flowing. Right? They clog up like this. See, that's clogged up stuff. That's little EGR flow. It's supposed to come through here. Yeah, it's supposed to come through there and then go in. that clogs up the sludge. You get a PL401, you pull the throttle body off, you see that passage all clogged up with crud and sludge. There's the EGR valve right there. See how it goes in here? It's supposed to go in here and go right in there, but if it sludges up, and there's another clogged up one. The closed loop system must detect this and flag the lack of flow. All right, sequence of events. PCM checks engine coolant temperature for proper engine temperature. It also doesn't operate when the engine's cold. PCM checks throttle position and engine speed. Opens EGR and monitors feedback to make certain EGR flows. 1, 2, 3. You got it? Now, if I tell you guys, if I'm asking you, what's PCV? Why do we need it? What's EGR? Why do we need it? You know, how does it work? This kind of thing. You're gonna be able to do this? Nick? Yeah? You better be
trying to take it in.
Doing the work. If you charge a person for parts or labor you didn't deliver, is that stealing? If you charge a person for parts and labor you didn't deliver, did you steal something?
Yes.
That's a no-brainer. You ripped them off. You got it? They paid for the work, for the parts, and you didn't do the work. You didn't install the parts, you stole from them. There was this one guy that I worked with at the Ford place for years, and he died. And when we were cleaning out his toolbox and moving his out there for, we looked under the bench, and there's all kind of new parts under there he didn't put on. Got paid to put them on, but he didn't put them on. You know what I mean? So he actually got, you know, the labor price was what he was stealing. He didn't, you know, and the customer got cheated.
So what, he was putting in old parts on?
No, he just never did the work. He just told them, you need this, and they'd say, okay, and he'd just leave the part under the bench and get paid for it. And
send them out their way?
Yeah.
Wow. But what if the car's still doing the same thing?
Well, a lot of the times whenever you're working on a car, you know, you may be telling them they need something that they don't know they need, and they didn't know they needed, they couldn't feel, and they won't know the difference. I mean, he was slick enough to do that kind of thing. But I don't know. There was a guy that I was training one time, and there was a Mustang that we had that we were working on. That was nearly a new Mustang, but it was out of warranty. I mean, you know what I'm saying? The guy had driven enough to be out of warranty, but it wasn't but a year or two old. We had to order a wire harness because at that particular time, the little pigtail that goes under the alternator wasn't available by itself anywhere for a car that new. And the manufacturer didn't make that pigtail available, so you had to order a whole wire harness, $275. A lot of work put it on there too. And so I noticed when a new wire harness came in, the guy said, "Yeah, go ahead and do it." He was willing to pay the labor price on for the harness and all that stuff. Put it on. He wanted that fixed. He wanted it like new again. So we get that new harness, open it up. Oh my gosh, this looks like an octopus. It's got stuff going everywhere. It's got to go into the manifold and everything else. We're going to be working on it for 4 or 5 hours. And the boy that was helping me was sitting there looking at it, scratching his head, and he was just looking at that pigtail. What are you thinking? He said, well, I'm thinking we could probably just cut this pigtail off and solder it on there, and he would never be no wider. I said, that ain't what he's paying us to do, man. I said, you need to pull the manifold off, and you go ahead and put the wire harness on it. You know, this is integrity. This is what you're getting paid to do. And as simple as it might seem to do this, you know, now, here's the other thing. If you ask the customer, and you say, you can save a lot of your labor costs if you let us just cut this wire off of here and let you have the harness to take with you, that's above board. If you say, you know, we'll just charge you like 30 minutes labor to solder this terminal on here, or we can put the harness on whichever way we want to go. And he says, well, I'll just hang on to the harness. You know, if he tells you it's okay to do that, that's fine. But if you're charging the guy 4 hours labor, you better give him 4 hours worth of labor. You know. Here's the evaporator system. Fights hydrocarbons that evaporate from the fuel tank, stores them, and then draws them through the engine when the PCM decides to. Now, when you're gassing it up, there's also a vapor recovery system that's set up. It's pretty slick, that creates low pressure while the gasoline is flowing. So it pulls the fumes away from where you are and takes them down in there and stores them in this canister. And that canister is usually mounted on the frame. It can be under the back of the car. It can be all over the place. You may see them sometime in the engine compartment everywhere. And typically they've got a vent solenoid that's only closed whenever the PCM is checking to see if there's a leak in the system. And you know, they got a vent one way or another. Even if they don't have a vent solenoid, they'll have a vent. And when this little vacuum thing on the on the engine, when the PCM decides to purge the canister, it'll pull those vapors out of there that were stored from this evaporating gas and pull them in. Now it has a tendency to sort of gerrymander the mix a little bit. And so a lot of these, when you're looking at the different cells the computer is using, it'll tell you if it's in a purge-free cell. If it's in a cell where it's purging, you may have gasoline vapors going in there that's changing things a little bit, and it factors all that in. Because it's not always gonna be the same amount of vapor. It may be a lot one time, or if somebody's packing a gas and there's liquid in this darn thing, and they pull liquid gas in there and make it stumble, and all that. Point of the matter is, back in the day, they used to do it so that they had a little vacuum switch that only operated the EGR when you were driving down the road, and it also had a thermal switch it went through. And they would actually do the purge, they would tee off of that and they let it purge while it was getting EGR. So only when it was getting EGR would it purge. Now, the PCM totally makes that decision, and it may be purging when you're sitting there just at a stoplight. Tick, 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 tick. You know, you hear that thing sometimes. If they pull that thing under the air conditioning pipe on my old Jeep, it would sound like the engine was knocking. When that thing was going pop, 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 it'd scare you to death because you thought you had a rod knocking or something. But anyway, that's really important. If somebody's packing the gas, if they say, when I'm sitting in a car, I'm sitting here, all of a sudden my vehicle tries to die and it surges ahead, you ask them if they're packing a gas tank. Because if they are, that'll be the cause of it. Say, stop packing the gas tank, see if it goes away. Won't cost them nothing to do that, right? Early evap systems didn't check for leaks. They just, pulled it out, right? And some of them had a purge valve on here, some of them had it up here, or wherever they put it didn't matter, as long as the engine controller, or not the engine controller, but the carburetor system had ported vacuum. Ported vacuum has only got vacuum when you get your foot on the gas. And that would operate this little diaphragm, and then that would open this up, and then you pull the vapor, you have the vacuum here, and the vapor that had been stored in the gas tank would be there. Now this right here was also storing vapor from evaporating carburetor, you will see. So that's an old one. The purge air, the vent on that one was on the bottom of the canister. Now this is a sort of a blow up of that, that's a little trigger that comes from reported vacuum, and this right here is the one that would pull the vapor into the thing. You got a little purge inlet cap on this one. This one is that one's slightly different but similar. And so that little purge inlet cap is nothing more than a vent so air can get in there and purge that out. Alright, now evap systems, whenever you're looking at that, when you see this little green cap, you ever see this little green cap right here? That little green cap is where you're going to pump your smoke in. You're going to go in here with your scan tool, you're going to tell the vent solenoid, the background canister to close, and you're going to pump smoke in there. And when that smoke gets pumped in there, you watch where it's spurting out, and that'll find out where you're getting your evap code. Got it? Ain't complicated. Now, OBD2 evaporative system monitor. What you got right here, there's your vapor canister, there's your PCM. It will not check the evaporative system for leaks, and the way it does is it closes the vent, it pulls a little vacuum on the tank, and it closes off and see if it'll hold. And it's monitoring the pressure, it's got a pressure sensor on it. And if that pressure leaks back up, it throws a code, PO455 or whatever, if it's a big one. A lot of them nowadays have got a fuel cap light that comes on. Anyway, there's your little vent solenoid right there, see? Now you close the vent solenoid with your scan tool, and you pump your smoke in there. Your smoke thing is going to be between the solenoid, which the solenoid is going to be blocked if that's not energized, between the solenoid and here, and it's going to pump smoke through all this stuff. You take the gas cap off, let it fill the whole system up with smoke till it's coming out there, put it back on, and get your bright light and see where the smoke's coming from. You can usually find a leak that way, pretty sharp. There's a worksheet on that, by the way. And there's what your pressure sensor looks like. And there's what your vent solenoid looks like on the Chevrolet. And there's your canister right there. You've seen those before. If you open your paycheck one Friday and find the payroll department made a mistake and gave you $100 more than you should have been paid, what's the right thing to do?
Bring it to their attention.
The payroll clerk told me one time that this guy that worked up front, this happened to him, he ran straight to the bank, cashed the check, and when he got back, they said, "Where'd you go?" He said, "I went and cashed my check." He said, "You owe us $100. We overpaid you." He thought he was going to get away with something, you know what I mean? All right. If you know they made an error in your favor, you'll bring it to their attention. The only right thing to do, I did it several times. They were paying me a certain way that I wanted to ask them to pay me this way. It's the way I want to be paid. You look after me when times are good, I'll look at you when times, you look at me when times are bad, I'll look at you when times are good, right? So I wanted, at that particular point in my life, I wanted a flat paycheck. And I would turn like 67 hours or something like that, and then I'd go, and they would, and this service manager that we got would say, "Hey, why don't we just pay him his flag time this time and see if he likes that?" And it would be like $300 or $400 more than I usually got paid. I'd open my check and I'd say, "Golly," I'd say, go in here to the payroll clerk and say, "Well, what's wrong with that picture?" "Oh, well, we don't usually pay you that much." "I know." What'd you do it this time for? I guess I messed up and charged you, paid you for your flag time. I said, well, let's fix that. I mean, how you gonna do it? You gonna take it off next week's check or what? Thing about it is, if you come forward like that, they'll get to where they trust you, totally, because you earned it, you know what I mean? But if you're somebody that's always trying to see what you can get, you know? All right, air system, AIR, air injection reactor, since the mid-1960s, mandatory in the 70s. Remember the old air pumps that a lot of these old cars had on them? Broncos got one. And not the air conditioner compressor, this is an air pump. And it's a little diverter valve here, and it would pump upstream air into the manifold, because whenever that hydrocarbons are coming out when it's cold or really hot, we want to add some oxygen. They're going to turn those things into carbon dioxide instead of hydrocarbons. So you add 2 molecules of oxygen to, because it wants to get married to 2 of them anyway, that molecule of hydrocarbon. Since it's so rich when it's cold and all this was coming out there, we'd pump some oxygen in there and we'd make that a lot cleaner coming out of the pipe. Wasn't getting any benefit out of it, we just cleaning it up. That's what we're basically doing. Now, that system, it also would help get rid of cold start HC and help the catalyst deal with CO and NOx, because when it was warm engine and it pumped the air downstream, it would go in between the 2 bricks and it would basically take and carry some oxygen into the second brick back there and take care of some gases, and then the light off cap, you know, would take care of some gases, but it needed some oxygen help down that way. That air injection reactor is pretty important. Nowadays they've got electric air pumps on them. What they got, a little pump about this big, and it's turned on, and it just pumps a little bit of air. And so we basically, the older ones had belt-driven pumps and pulse air injection valves. The one that, the thing is, check valve right here into your exhaust would keep those exhaust pulses from coming up in here and melting these little plastic valves and everything. If this sucker went bad, it would basically, you'd come in there and you see these things all melted down and ruined and all that. And the anti-afterburn valve, well, some of these things, you know, there's a lot of the different ways that they did this. If these things weren't working right, when you give it the gas and let off, if it's, you know, on the old carbureted engine, that gasoline would sweat inside the intake when it was running, because the carburetor was putting it right up on top, and whenever you let off, that pressure would drop and all that would turn to vapor, and there wasn't enough air for it to burn in the combustion chamber. When it went into the exhaust, some of that fresh oxygen was pumping down there through this AIR system, and it'd go boom, sound like a shotgun, and scare the daylights out of you. Or sometimes it go boop, 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 boop. You hear it make a little fluff popping noises and all. And so anytime you see one of those things that backfire and scare the daylights out of you, there's a problem with that AIR system, you know. Little air injection nozzle they got in the exhaust manifold there. So anyway, the natural low cylinder puffs, you know, the exhaust system, and some of them would just use that instead of having an air pump and all. They actually, if they had a big enough one, they let the natural low pressure puffs, you know, pulses in the exhaust system pull air through there, which is pretty cool. The newer ones have got these little vacuum pumps. These vacuum pumps on Volkswagens and stuff, on some of them, they like to crap out, and they'll throw you a code. And so the electronic pump, you know, it does the same thing. The check valve is always going to be there to keep those low pressure, to keep those exhaust pulses from getting up in here and melting everything down. There's your sequence of events. Vehicle starts, PCM determines coolant intake temp, triggers secondary AIR pump relay to power up the pump, ground secondary AIR solenoid, intake vacuum travels through the combination valve. So you see, you got some parts here that are operating on that. All right, if you borrow something from your employer without asking and never return it, is that the same as stealing?
Mm-hmm.
If you borrow something from the school and don't return it, you know how many times I'll buy 3 or 4 or 5 little air chucks, and then we'll have 3, and then we'll have 2, and then we'll have 1, and hey, where do the air chucks go? You know, and what's funny, that's not something you leave under the hood of a car. You know what I mean? You don't have an air chuck under the hood of a car. They get gone one at a time, you know, that's why I buy cheap ones, right? I'm not saying it's okay to take them, but, you know, that's also why I buy $10 multimeters, you know, you run over with a car or something. All right, if it belongs to somebody else, you take it and keep it, you stole it. This one guy, Donnie Smith, I should call him Snuffy Smith, he was kind of skinny like Nick, except he had a big beard, he talked like a hillbilly and all. And he says, he's over rooting around in this guy's toolbox. And I said, Donnie, what are you doing rooting around in Philip's toolbox? He goes, I'm a cylinder honed. And I says, well, you're an engine mechanic, you ought to have a cylinder hone of your own. He goes, my brother borrowed my cylinder hone, he didn't give it back. And I said, why don't you get your brother by the beard and jerk him around? He goes, how'd you know my brother had a beard? I couldn't imagine him not having a beard. This guy was a hillbilly now. All right. Catalyst efficiency, catalytic converter since 75. An example of an inefficient catalyst, you can go to Motor Age and you can read the article that I recently wrote about herding cats. If you look up on searchautoparts.com, you write herding cats, you'll get mine. Okay, so example of an efficient catalyst, upstream oxygen sensor, downstream. You see how this was really active and that one's lazy? That's the way it's supposed to be. If this one's not any good, see that upstream and downstream are just alike. Now I will tell you this downstream oxygen sensor can affect fuel trim. It wants to keep this bad boy happy. So basically, if you looked at everything else, you know, if there's this one's not working right, and this one here gets the idea that it's not, the fuel trim is not working like it's supposed to, there's a total fuel trim thing you do with this. That downstream 802S, the engine controller will change the mix to keep this thing right here from getting too hot. Fuel trims short and long provide correction factor to balance the mix when the combustion process drifts to. You've seen this. Y'all have done fuel trim stuff, right? Y'all have seen that. Nod in your head, nod in your head. All right, fuel trim will run near zero, not too far positive or negative on a healthy system. When you got through with that vehicle yesterday, you were seeing real close to zero. Remember that? That's what you're supposed to see. And it's always switching. All right. Closed loop fuel control is the name of the system here. That's the name of the game. Perfect mix is the target of this system. It's trying to keep it burning as clean as it can. Closed loop means it's paying attention to the oxygen sensor and adjusting the mix as it goes. Open loop is when the engine's cold or when you're at wide open throttle. It's where there's something wrong. All right, that's what you got. See, lean exhaust causes it to go plus, rich exhaust causes it to go minus. Zero is no adjustment, but it's always going to be moving back and forth a little bit on short fuel trim. If short fuel trim goes as far as it can go and it can't fix it, then long fuel trim will start to ratchet the center point farther up, and it's going to, if you're going in there, you may see short fuel trim that's right around zero and long fuel trim that's at 26. If you clear it, dump all your memory and put it back together and you crank it up, you'll see long fuel trim at zero and short fuel trim will start to walk up and it'll hit the top again, it'll go up. If you've made a repair and you think you're done, then clear the codes, wash it, clean out the throttle body and all that hogwash, whatever you need to do. Put it back together and fire it up and see if that short fuel trim stays close to zero. So that's going to be the acid test. You can also watch your oxygen sensors, make sure they're switching like they should. Oxygen sensors sometimes will get ragged and sluggish and slow. You have to replace them just because they ain't quite working right. Rear sensors can affect fuel trim. This is what I was talking about. Most mechanics might not realize the rear sensors are reading incorrectly. It will throw the fuel trim out of whack to satisfy the rear sensors because it wants to protect the cap. Fuel system monitor since about 83. A perceived lean condition drives the pulse up. Fuel pulse being injector held open longer. Perceived rich condition drives the pulse down. O2 sensors provide a near instant after the fact analysis of what happened. You know what had the oxygen sensor hooked up to the scope out there? How quick it reacted, Then in the combustion chamber, the PCM reacts by tilting the teeter-totter of short fuel trims back and forth. It's all about adaptive learning to maintain balance. Adaptive learning is something that also does keep the idle speed stable. Fuel system monitor. Cold start, on engine coolant, air temperature, barometric pressure measured really fast. Closed throttle voltage is noted. The crank sensor starts its output as the engine spins. Cam sensor considered for injector timing. Injectors double pulse to wet the manifold when started operate. The engine starts. The O2 heaters quickly bring the sensor's temperature required. I mean, it doesn't happen long. It's real fast. Fuel system monitor. You see them fuel trims? There's your fuel trims right there. See the long fuel trim up around 25 on that screen? And this one right here, you're going to be looking at short fuel trim here, fuel system, that's closed loop. And then you watch your oxygen sensor switching like it's supposed to be. Monitors the oxygen sensors and it responds to those corrections. And then make sure you clear them like I said, and then fire it back up. Make sure if it moves away from zero right away, you didn't fix all the vacuum leaks or whatever. Now, always reset keep alive memory after performing a repair to clear any skewed data out of the PCM tables. Take your battery cable off. It's a good idea to do it. And like I say, sometimes if you change a battery on something like a Dodge truck, it has a closed up throttle body, it'll stall when you start it up, it goes dead, start it up, it goes dead. Oh no, I changed my battery in my Dodge truck one. So what you do there is while you've got all this stuff took off, if it's a high mileage vehicle, just check the throttle body if it needs to be cleaned. If it was out, then okay before. Always view and record freeze frame data. That's the one little snapshot that it takes when it sets the code, and it gives you an idea of what was going on when the code was set. Now the DRB3 people like to call a similar conditions window, right? Multiple DTC